She's got a breakaway. She's all alone. She's going. She's going. Oh no, wrong goal, kiddo. It's chaos out there. Their stomachs don't have to be. Introducing Culturelle Kids Probiotics Plus Electrolytes. Sugar-free, more hydrating than water alone from the #1 pediatrician recommended brand. Youth soccer is never boring, but your kid's stomach should be. Culturelle Probiotics, the science of a boring gut. See website for details.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
#1 best-selling author. It is an honor to have you on my show, Mr. Dan Hendrickson. Thank you very much. I'm very happy that you joined me on my platform, The Randomness of Nothing. How are you today, sir?
Very good, Shad. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, you know what excites me the most, obviously, is that you write Westerns, and there's something about a throwback that you have, like, to a time when it was a very prevalent, part of, history in media, and it kind of went away for a long time. I remember growing up on those as a kid, and it wasn't really until, Clint Eastwood, when he got older and Unforgiven came back out, that then it became more prevalent back in media. You're obviously doing a wonderful series of books. I would love to hear the story about your background and Railroad Man and all the wonderful things you're writing about.
Well, Railroad Man is a continuation of my historical fiction series. It started with a book called Brandy, Ballad of a Pirate Princess. Mm. And Brandy is actually the protagonist's mother of Railroad Man. Mm. So it started out like in the 1830s, and she was raised on a pirate ship. And her parents were killed by the English Navy, and she had to run away and hide in Jamaica. And she met a man who was part of the abolitionist efforts down there in the Caribbean back in the 1830s, right after King William freed all the slaves in the British Empire. And so a lot of English sailors were very loyal to King William, and they became abolitionists in the Caribbean. And what they would do is they had their own ships, and they financed them themselves, and they would go to the American coast, and they would get runaway slaves, and they would take them to maroons all over the Caribbean where they could live free. Mm-hmm. Well, Brandy was raised by pirates, and pirates were slavers. So when she met this man who was a abolitionist, she fell in love with him, and she had to make a choice. And so she did. And they got married, and they ran one of the most successful abolitionist ships in the Caribbean. In the meantime, she had a couple of kids.
Right.
Now, you're talking about my martial arts background. The reason I'm trying to give Brandy a little bit of a head start to Railroad Man is I think it's important. But Brandy was trained by a Shaolin monk who came to the Caribbean seeking a female disciple. Because he had a problem with the previous one, and the only way that he could correct that problem was to successfully train another one. So all that details in my books and stuff. Right. In the meantime, he's teaching her all these martial arts. He's teaching her how to sword fight and all these different things. So by the time she has to rescue her man John, she's a pretty formidable warrior.
That's amazing.
And she goes and she gets her ship and she rescues him and stuff. And they have kids. And one of the children is Arthur. Now, Arthur is the protagonist of my book, Railroad Man. And that's this book right here.
Yeah.
Okay. He runs away from home in the 1860s and joins the Union Navy because he wants to fight for the freedom of the slaves. That was his goal.
Mhm.
And he does. And he joins the Navy, obviously, because he was raised on a ship. And so they make him an ensign. And he does he has a, he stays throughout the whole war, but he had a really horrible experience during the war that kind of changed him. And it was that while he was trying to rescue a Pinkerton agent who had some plans from Lee that they wanted to get the grant, he witnessed a ship full of runaway slave children drowned in the Trent River. They were
terrible.
bombed by a southern ship, and he tried to rescue him, but he couldn't, and it traumatized him pretty badly. So he left the military life. He left anything related to military life, and he joined the railroad.
Okay.
And he became a railroad ramrod, which was someone who helped them open up new territories. And so Arthur deals with this trauma, and it makes him a borderline alcoholic.
Right.
But he's really, really, really good at his job.
Right.
And he gets transferred to Wyoming in 1883. Because, see, by the 1800s, the railroad had gone from New York to San Francisco. It was completely across the country. It connected the whole country, the United States, together.
Yes.
Now they wanted to go north and south. They wanted to go north and south. And they wanted to connect the country in that way. The biggest industry back then was the beef industry. And we were the beef suppliers for the entire world, pretty much. We were the beef and leather suppliers. So the people that were making the most money in the country wasn't the people rushing to get gold out in California or anything like that. It was the beef industry. There was a lot of money there. And the railroad was going to make it a lot more profitable.
No question.
The cattlemen, why? Because they didn't have to drive their cattle for like 500 miles, 1,000 miles. They didn't lose all that weight, so they could sell their cattle at a higher weight. Well, the railroad was something that the cattlemen really wanted to go through. But there's also another situation that's going on in the country back then, and that is the Native Americans on the reservations.
Correct.
And we would take a lot of these people, and we would take them from like 1,000-mile or 1,500-mile hunting ground that they fed their tribes with, and we condense them into like a 150 square mile reservation. That caused a problem. And the problem was, how did they feed their people? Well, one of the solutions that the government came up with is that they were going to buy them beef from cattlemen and give it to them to feed their people. Well, the cattlemen really didn't have a problem with this, even though they were selling their cattle to the government and then given to the tribes at rock bottom rate. It was the fact that these Indians, they're not stupid. They started developing their own herds. And as they developed their own herds, they got to the point where they had a surplus. So they wanted to sell the beef. Well, so the railroad comes through and says, hey, we would like to build a railroad line through your reservation. What do you want for it? And, of course, the Indians are like thinking, well, we'd like to get some free shipping for our beef to the slaughterhouses in basically in Chicago.
Correct. Right.
So this made a conflict.
Scale of economics.
The cattlemen and the Indians and the railroad. So I put this guy, Arthur, right in the middle of it.
Nice.
He has to negotiate with a chief named Pretty Eagle, who was the chief of the Crow Nation, the actual chief. I looked this up in history.
It's amazing.
Crow Nation.
It's amazing.
And he had to negotiate with him to get permission to build the railroad line through his reservation. Now, most of these reservations would not let cattlemen drive their herds through their reservations without paying them, rightfully so, because it was their grazing land, so they should make a little money. The cattlemen didn't want to do that, so they loved the idea that the railroad was coming through. But they didn't like the idea that these tribes were going to get free shipping. So what happened is, all this stuff. I grew up in Sheridan, Wyoming. So that's what I
was getting to, because I saw your background. I was listening because I just pictured all this going through my mind. I think of I was thinking of that wonderful classic Kevin Costner movie, Dances with Wolves, right? And even though that wasn't related to railroad shipping, right? I've seen the movie like a dozen times. I kept thinking about when he wanted to see the West before it was gone, so to speak, right? And how he integrated himself with the culture. And then on the side note, I was looking at when I watched 1923 and the way they, which is a sensational show, right?
Yes.
And I was just thinking, I'm just watching this in my mind play the scenario out because it's such a pure time in history that no matter how many times you see it, when it's well done, you can watch it all over again all the time. You know, I mean, you just can. It just sucks you right in because the Industrial Revolution, you know, you start seeing upgraded technologies, you know, Native Americans are depicted as real people with there's actual character building that took place, and there's a lot of sensitivity around some really tough times that are taking place.
Yeah, it was like there was no cookie cutter way of describing the West. It was a hodgepodge of cultures, different peoples from all over the world that just went. You know, it was where opportunity was arising in this country. And you know, the whole situation with these Native Americans being on reservations was something that everybody had to deal with. And you know that's when the Bureau of Indian Affairs was formed back in like in the 1870s and stuff like that to protect rights.
Right.
And so the railroad, being the second largest industry in the country as a industry, this was just a huge conflict. It could have
nuclear
another war.
Yeah,
it really could. Indian tribes could have rebelled and all that kind of stuff. But so I put Arthur in Cheyenne, Wyoming, where there's a depot that facilitating the expansion north, and he's the head guy. He's sent in to do this,
right?
And then there's this girl that works at the depot who is the granddaughter of Chief Pretty Eagle.
Oh, beautiful!
And her dad is the sheriff of Sheridan. So I put it in there just to kind of.
Of course, it's got to. Yeah, because it can't just be about railroad experience. There's more to the character than the plot given in the actual scenario. They meet people. There's interactions. There's 3-dimensional people involved, right? And if you're looking to make a full character, it has to be the breadth and depth of who they meet and interact with.
And that's what happened, and so they develop a romantic relationship. But the way I started it out was she ends up nursemaiding him back to health after he has one of his episodes over the trauma from the war.
Right.
And she does a better job at getting him back on his feet than anybody's ever done. And he falls in love with her, but she's the daughter of Chief Pretty Eagle. And so the boss of the depot, Arthur, had to go down to Denver with a sheriff, not a sheriff, but a Marshal William Lloyd, who is a character in both of my books. He's a historical figure. He was a Pinkerton agent back during the Civil War, and he spied for the Union forces against the Southern forces, the Confederate forces. Yeah. And so I put him in the book as a guy who Arthur rescues and gets the plans to Grant.
Nice.
So they have a deep connection. Lloyd shows up. He wants Arthur to go down to Denver because he wants to expose this cattle rustling that's going on from the cattle that's given to the Native American tribes down in Colorado, and they're doing it right through the railroad. So that's Arthur's business. Arthur answers directly to the president of the railroad, is a guy named Mr. Dillon. And so he goes down there and he helps out. Well, while this is happening, the head of the depot is all frantic that they can't get past Sheridan through the Crow Nation up to Billings.
Right.
And all these cattlemen are saying, we got to get this railroad through before the fall so we can ship our cattle. We don't want a cattle driving down to Denver again.
Right.
So, so he takes Chief Pretty Eagle's daughter with him up to Sheridan because that's her hometown. He figures he can use her in negotiation. It all kind of blows up in his face. And they end up kidnapping some of the bad cattlemen guy end up kidnapping her.
Oh my goodness!
Arthur catches wind of it, and he has to race up to Sheridan and free her. And so I'm not going to try to give away too much of it.
I was going to ask you that. I was going to say that nicely. Like, hold on, man. Leave some up for suspense, sir.
Yeah. There is a fantastic hero in this that I haven't brought up, and it's a horse named Swiftwind.
Beautiful.
And Swiftwind is an Appaloosa horse. And like I said, I grew up in Sheridan, Wyoming. I know, a lot of the tribes. And one of the horses that they really love, Native Americans, is Appaloosas.
Mm-hmm.
They almost have a mythical stature with some of the tribes. And so this was a stallion. It was a big 16-hand high stallion, which is huge. And he would only let Eileen, Chief Pretty Eagle's granddaughter, and his daughter, a pony, ride him.
Mm-hmm.
They'd only let him ride him bareback.
Yeah.
They put in a story that Arthur's a terrible rider. He grew up on a ship. He didn't like riding horses. He only did when he had to. But at the end of the book, this horse seeks him out.
Yeah.
And wants him to ride him to go rescue Eileen. So there's a little comedy there, but it's also, this horse is fantastic. So at the end of the book, Arthur rides this horse who belongs to, Pretty Eagle's granddaughter, daughter, and into rescuing them. And so it has all the flavor and chemistry of a good Western, but it has the backdrop of something that I don't think many people know about, and that's the whole conflict that happened back then between the railroad, the Indian tribes, and the cattlemen.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm sorry I cut you off. I apologize about that.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and sometimes I think people don't think, until you read or watch about things like that people weren't as primitive sometimes as they think that they actually were, right? Like, think about what it took to actually put a railroad through a mountain using dynamite, right? Like, people that know that Alfred Nobel, where the Nobel Prize got its name after, invented dynamite, right? And that really allowed the idea that there was places that were previously inhabitable for the most part to be able to actually have speed to market and be connected to the other side of the country and not have to trek through very dangerous territory by foot or by horse, right? So what these people did with very simplistic tools that they had to create on their own and also negotiate in real time and make up laws that in many cases are still prevalent to this day, to be able to figure this out of how do we make water come here? How do we feed people here? How do we create commerce in areas that are very, very tough outside of nature and are very sparsely, distance between people? And when you add compelling characters inside of that, I mean, it's just a wonderful story to tell.
Yeah, and you're describing all the elements that any historical fiction writer has to take into account.
Yes.
It takes a lot of research.
It does.
It's not like doing a fiction story or a fantasy where you got to do a whole world building, which is a lot of work in and of itself. Believe me, I'm not saying that what I do is harder than what they do, but I'm saying it's different. Because when you do historical fiction...
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. All backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
You have to look at that period in history.
Mm-hmm.
You got to keep it accurate.
Yes.
But you want to put a story in there.
Yeah.
You want to fit it with, Chief Pretty Eagle was a real guy.
Yeah.
Mr. Dillon was a real guy. And somebody like William Lloyd was a real guy. And so I use their stories and their backgrounds, and then I put my fictional characters and weave them through there. And it's a lot of fun.
It really is.
Sorry. I was just going to say, you brought up inventions. And I have a lot of fun with inventions. My dad was an inventor. He was in the who's who of Wyoming inventors. And
amazing.
Injection system to fix bowling alleys. And so I have a lot of fun using inventions of the day in my stories and how people react to them.
Mm-hmm.
And during this time, a couple of inventions that came out were the typewriter,
Yes.
the alarm clock,
Amazing.
so within a 10-year period of 1883, and the pencil, the
Right.
lead-filled pencil. And
Right.
so I use those things in my book, and I had a great time with it. People didn't, typewriters, where you could put a piece of paper in, you could type. That was like incredible to them at that point.
Absolutely.
That's all I had. And so I had a part in the book where this mid-level executive has this woman working for him who is an expert typist to the point that she could take dictation, which is absolutely unheard of. And this guy Arthur, he's watching this woman work, and he knows that even Mr. Dillon, his boss, doesn't have a secretary that skillful. So
Right.
he's looking for a criminal in the organization who could afford something like that. So I just used that as a little bit of a backdrop. And the pencil thing was pretty incredible. We just take for granted pencils, but to have a piece of wood with some lead in it that you could write in, you could take a knife and just sharpen it off a little
Absolutely.
bit and keep writing. It was incredible back then.
Well, I think too, even when you reference, I saw your interview earlier before we came on, when you were talking with Lisa Urbanski, when you made the reference to your previous novel, and you talked about branding the pirate princess, and then you said that was obviously the lineage. So it's great that you have a continuation of your characters throughout multiple mediums, because then that can, number one, draw people back to stories that maybe they weren't familiar with. Hey, I saw this Western. Well, you might want to know about his mother and how the origins of the story came. And then second of all, there's a line that's drawn from, hey, it went from the Caribbean, the ship, and then the expansion of westward. So everything's tied together, right, so to speak, which means that there's a story that continues. They're a part of history. And then what happens, too, to your point, you're dealing in a course of history where everybody's in this race to, find new territories, lands, locations, and resources. And it's for lack of a better term, it's an arms race, and so to speak, right?
Oh yeah,
it really is, right? Spain and Portugal divided up the world in 1492, and then it became, where's the new territory? Obviously, and history's not pretty. Things that happen that people can, sit back and say, wow, people did some really, macabre things, and we all know those things. But having said all that, the story that gets told about it, it's a thing of beauty to see, where you're sitting at right now, how this actually took place in real, and then adding a fictional spin on it it takes a lot of work, but it's great to watch it and read about it.
And there's a lot of bad people down through history did a lot of bad things, but there's also some fantastic.
Yes, absolutely.
People
without question.
Extraordinary things too.
Without question.
Some of the rules that they put about these reservations that back then didn't seem like such a big deal. Mm-hmm. Now is kind of paying off for some of these tribes, because they have little Las Vegases on their reservations that's generating like huge amounts of income and elevating the whole tribe.
Without question. Without question.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice that they have that. I mean, really, I just marvel at some of the decisions that were made like a couple of 100 years ago that actually at the time looked like a compromise, but now are benefiting some of these people.
I think the one thing that people can sit back and say, is that what happened, but the stories that get told and where you're standing right now have a long history behind them. And people like yourself who can research it and then insert characters while still maintaining authenticity is a really beautiful thing to watch and read about. Because when you transport your mind, I'm thinking Arthur, right? And I'm thinking about this guy who saw a lot of painful things in his life, right? And here he is with this expansion westward, and he has to deal with the businessmen who want, and it's not like back then where if somebody had a shady deal, like the corruption in the railroad industry, well, they could just take a guy out to a field, shoot him, and keep business moving. There wasn't really a lot of checks and balances if somebody was in the way of business expansion like there is now, right? It was almost like, hey, that guy goes missing, we're going to keep it moving, so to speak, right? So I do have to ask you, like, what made you get into authorship, like, to begin with?
Well, that's got to go lay directly on two sources. Number one, I'm a minister, God Almighty.
Mm-hmm.
I think that God just put it on my heart to start writing.
Mm-hmm.
But the influence from childhood was my father.
Mm-hmm.
My father was an English professor. He was one of the most prolific readers that I have ever been around. That
Beautiful.
man could read 3 or 4 books a day. I mean, not a day, but a week.
Oh my gosh.
I'm talking 300 to 500 word books. And back in the 60s and the 70s, they came out with this craze called speed reading. And
Yeah.
I never mastered it, but my dad tried to show me how. But my dad got to the point where he could read like a paragraph at a glance, or some of these guys would do a page at a glance. Still have
Isn't that amazing?
There was classes and stuff that they had out back then.
Yeah.
I haven't heard much about it later. But my dad was a speed reader, and he did very well with it. And it'd be like my brother and I would bring home a book from the library or from school or from the bookstore, and we'd be reading it, and it'd take us a couple of weeks to get through it. My dad would take that book, and in 1 or 2 days, he'd read it. And then he'd wait for us to get done so he could talk to us about it, because he loved talking to us about the books we were reading. That was just a good pleasure for him. And so he just instilled in me a great love for literature.
Beautiful.
And a great love for, the written word. And my dad, he wrote some plays and some poems and stuff that he got published through the University of Wyoming. And he just loved reading. Him and his brother, who also was about the same way. His brother was a scientist that lived in San Francisco, California, worked for what do you call those guys? He made missiles and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, like missile scientist. But anyway, they used to have a contest. They'd pick a section of the library and they'd see who could read it first.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness! But of course, right? And not who can run the quickest, quarter mile, but who can read the book. What though?
A whole section of books. They would see who could get through this section first, and they would time each other.
But that also stems to like something different now, right? Because people had to utilize books to be able to transport their minds to places. It's almost the attention span. I'm not dissing anybody. It's almost like, do you find it now that it's harder for people to read a book simply because the attention span that's required to read a book, maybe, we have so many things that are also grasping for our attention at this point, right? And maybe
I was very concerned about that when I first started writing.
Of course,
I knew that about people. I just gotten all 3 of my kids through high school and were going into college as I started writing.
Yeah,
they're all doing great. One's going to be a lawyer, another one's a officer in the military, another one's a
beautiful
news reporter.
Awesome.
But I looked into that. And one of the things that I employ in my writing that I've gotten a lot of compliments on is I use the third person present tense.
Okay.
And see, my degree is in journalism. And when I was studying journalism back in the early 80s, my professor, a man named Dan Moriah, his idea was that when we write a story, we have to make it as vivid and as upfront as who we're competing with. And we're competing with the radio and the TV.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, when you write an article for the newspaper, you have to bring people right there and let them act, let them think like they're right there seeing it. And third person present tense. Third person because you want to give an omniscient view. You want to give the whole view at once. Present tense means you put people right there in the action.
Right. They're seeing that in real time themselves.
Yeah. It doesn't work for a super long book, like, a book that's over 500 pages. It'll wear people out. But my books are basically, 300 pages.
Okay.
350 plots. And it works very well for action and adventure and stuff like that. And, it's written like a movie.
Beautiful.
You write it like you're seeing the whole screen play out in front of you. And I really believe that helps people to focus, especially younger people. I'm actually getting involved with homeschool associations and getting some of my books in there for parents to use for homeschooling, because we've done some tests and stuff, and the kids are really enjoying reading the books the way I write them.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's developing in front of their face.
Right.
And it's not the old style or the common style of literature is first person simple past tense.
You're right. Right.
But third person present tense is becoming more and more popular because people like to see a screen in their mind.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is about it too is when you can put yourself from the character's perspective, and even the detail of seeing the typewriter, right, where like this brand new invention, right, all these tools that we have at our disposal right now, but at the time that was the cell phone or the laptop of its day, so to speak, right? So it's those details and nuances and your attention to detail in history that make that portion of history all that more important to the reader themselves, because you're putting those details in place, right? And you're like, wow, that is important for being, in the late 18, mid 1800s, right? Because it was a very new technology that revolutionized communication, and it really did. And, in all those wonderful things that we take advantage of now ourselves. And I haven't even scratched the surface of all the things that you do. But obviously, for your time, I want to make sure we stick to the story of the book. Where can people find you, your wonderful works, and your future plans in authorship as well, too?
Well, my website is very easy. It's just my name. It's DanEHendrickson.com. So it's just all lowercase. So it's Dan, D-A-N-E, then Hendrickson, HENDRICKSON, .com. And that's where all my work is. I've got a lot of podcasts on there, a lot of interviews.
I saw that.
A lot of reviews for the books, awards that have been awarded to the books are on there and stuff like that. So that's one place you can find a lot of my work. I'm on Amazon, of course.
Yes, of course.
You can't be an author today without being on Amazon.
Without question.
So all my books are on Amazon. They're in digital format. You can buy them softbound or hardbound. Also, I have 4 books that are on audio. That's Brandy Ballad of a Pirate Princess, The Good Fight, The Cartel Crusher, and my Christian historical fiction, Magi, Apprentice. So those 4 are on audio,
nice.
and more to come.
Yep. I hope that these are, especially with the prevalence of streaming and all the different mediums that people can consume entertainment, I hope 2 things happen. It gets picked up and they honor your source material, because nothing infuriates people of work more than anything else than the book was like this. And I understand they have to change it, certain things, to make it an adaptation. But I hope that when you do get your work adapted, that they respect the hard work that you put in.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah, that was just like I was telling you earlier. That's any author's dream.
Oh man,
to somebody to look at your book and say, "Hey, we'd like to make this into a show or something." That would be what a compliment.
I can only imagine how competitive that is, right? Like, I mean,
I'm sure. I haven't even. I've been doing this now for 10 years, and I haven't even scratched that surface yet. I'm still, marketing my books, trying to get them known, doing interviews, doing articles, doing blogs, stuff like that. And I continue to write.
But I will say this, respectfully, I think that the Western genre, because of how, when it's well made, and because there's so much, it's something about that period in history where, everybody loves to see the guy on the horse with the I'm just saying, with the beautiful woman. And I mean, you do, man, with, and there's always like that, either that sheriff or that, and they're based on somebody real who really did that. Right. And then you have the formation of the country. You have Native Americans, you have, abolition, the end of slavery. You have all of these things taking place right now. Immigrants coming into the country, right? And it's all taking place, and you have all these groups of people basically having to figure it out in real time. And like, I'm sorry, I could watch those things all over again. I grew up on it with my father, watching them all the time, right?
Yeah, it tells us all. It says, we think we live in complicated times. Well, I don't really think there was ever not a complicated
That's
time.
the thing. That's the thing.
There was always something going on. There's
100%.
My life isn't any more difficult or any more better than theirs was. They
100%.
just lived according to their times. 100 years from now, they're going to look back at us and say, "Wow, they didn't have this, they didn't have this, and they didn't have that." Whatever new inventions come about. But you know what? We do what we have, and we're all still human, right? And we're all still somebody's going to write historical fiction about 2026 someday.
Exactly. And it's to say that usually conflicts arise from usually 2 things: land and food, right? So that's one of the reasons why, you get the chance to write. And the thing is about it is you think you've actually done like a lot of deep. You're still just scratching the surface of what really took place, right? So you're doing Wyoming and, Colorado and those other locations. But there's hundreds of years that you haven't even covered yet. And so it's a testament that you diving into that, your hard work and the ability to tell a great story, that I think that there's nothing but, future success. You certainly don't need my show for it, but I'm certainly happy you took time out of your busy schedule.
Oh, Rashad, I'm very, very happy that you let me come on, and I love talking to you, and I love to do it again.
I love stuff like this. Yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever books arise from this, and I want to appreciate you for being on the Randomness of Nothing podcast.
Appreciate it too. Thank you, sir.
Anytime.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.